Have you ever noticed how some women walk into a room and without saying a single word, the atmosphere shifts? Heads turn, people make space for them, conversations pause for a second, and yet these women aren't always the most conventionally beautiful, the most successful, or the most socially skilled. There's something else going on, something you can't quite explain, but you can definitely feel. Today, we're going to talk about that something. Not the fake confidence you post on social media, not the role you perform to look strong, but a deeper kind of presence, the kind that comes from inner wholeness. This is the kind of confidence that doesn't need applause, doesn't crumble when someone disapproves, and doesn't change shape to fit into every room. It's the quiet, steady energy of a woman who is truly on her own side. Carl Jung would say this is the journey from the persona, the mask we wear for the world, back to the self, our original, authentic essence. It's the path from living for others' expectations to living from our own center. And that journey, especially for women, is not just psychological. It's deeply spiritual, deeply embodied, and deeply emotional. Let's walk through it together. Imagine two women. The first one walks into a cafe. She's not wearing anything extraordinary. Simple jeans, a shirt, her hair tied loosely back. But there is a calm around her. She isn't trying to be noticed, and yet people notice. When she speaks to the barista, she looks them in the eyes, smiles genuinely, and says thank you like she means it. She sits at a table alone, drinks her coffee, and scrolls through her phone, but there's no frantic energy, no desperate checking to see who liked her last post. She seems at peace. Now imagine the second woman. She's stunning. Every detail of her appearance is curated. Makeup perfect, hair flawless, outfit carefully chosen. When she walks in, she scans the room quickly, almost unconsciously checking who is looking, who isn't, and whether she passes the test today. If people don't pay attention, she becomes restless. She laughs a little louder. She takes a selfie. She adjusts her posture. She keeps trying to add just a bit more performance, hoping the world will finally mirror back. You are enough. From the outside, they might look similar. Two women, two coffees, two lives. But internally, they are in completely different worlds. The first woman lives from inner wholeness. The second woman lives from a wound. And the difference has very little to do with looks, status, or skills, and everything to do with self-relationship. Real confidence is not something you perform. It's something you are. It's not a learned smile, a rehearsed posture, or a memorized script. It's not repeating affirmations in the mirror while ignoring the part of you that doesn't believe a single word. Real confidence is the natural result of mind, body, and soul aligning. It's the feeling you get when your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, and your actions actually match. Carl Jung described this as the process of moving from the social mask, the persona, back to the self. The persona is the role we play. The nice girl, the cool girl, the strong woman, the perfect professional, the always available girlfriend, the good daughter. Society rewards the persona. People applaud it. But if you live only as your persona, a part of you starts to fade. When we live as a persona for too long, we don't just hide our vulnerabilities, we also hide our power. You can recognize this in your own life when you say yes while your whole body screams no. You laugh off a comment that actually hurt you deeply. You accept relationships where you're begging for crumbs while pretending you're okay with it. You shrink your dreams so you don't make other people uncomfortable. You spend more energy managing what others think of you than listening to what you think of you. On the outside, you may look confident. You may be successful, admired, even envied. But internally, there's a quiet fracture, a split between who you truly are and who you believe you have to be. This is where self-betrayal begins. Every woman has a private contract with herself. It's not written on paper. It's written in the nervous system. It sounds like this. I will listen when I feel uncomfortable. I will speak up when something crosses my boundaries. I will leave situations that break my spirit. I will not abandon myself to be loved by others. Every time you keep this inner contract, your system records a piece of evidence. I can trust myself. I am safe with me. And every time you break it, every time you stay where your soul is screaming to leave, every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, every time you swallow your needs because you're afraid of losing someone, your system also records that I cannot count on myself. I will abandon me. Over time, these small violations add up. They don't look dramatic from the outside, but internally, they create a belief, I don't trust myself. And if you don't trust yourself, no achievement, no compliment, no relationship can ever feel fully secure. You might cling, chase, overcompensate, or perform. You might become hyper-attuned to every micro-expression, every delay in a text, every change in tone. Because when the inner base is shaky, the outer world becomes a constant threat. Jung called this life lived through the persona, a life driven by external approval, fear of judgment, and the terror of being seen as not enough. In the text you gave, there's a powerful distinction. Two types of feminine energy. On one side, we have goddess energy, a woman who is at peace with herself, who can set boundaries, who doesn't suppress her feelings, and who lives from love, not from fear. On the other side, we have wounded energy, a woman who lives in constant fear of being left, who chases approval, and who repeats the same painful patterns in love and life. Let's bring these energies to life. Goddess energy is not about perfection. It's not about being always kind, always elegant, always radiant. It's about wholeness. A woman in this energy knows she has light and shadow. She has days when she is soft and generous, and days when she needs to retreat and protect her space. She doesn't judge herself for being human. She doesn't need to look flawless to feel worthy. Her worth is not up for negotiation. When she loves deeply, but she does not sacrifice her self-respect to keep someone. She can say, I love you, but I love myself too. If this relationship requires me to abandon myself, it's not love. It's addiction. She can sit with discomfort instead of rushing to numb it. She can cry without feeling weak, say I don't know without feeling stupid, and ask for help without feeling like a burden. She doesn't react to everything. She responds from a grounded center. Now let's look at wounded energy. This is the woman who lives with a constant background fear. What if I am left? What if I am replaced? What if I am not enough? She often finds herself in relationships where she has to fight for attention or prove her value. She tolerates being half chosen, half respected, half loved, because the idea of having nothing feels worse than the reality of having too little. She might say things like, if I become a little thinner, a little more interesting, a little more understanding, maybe he'll stay. If I don't complain, if I don't show my needs, maybe they won't leave. If I give more, they will finally see I deserve to be chosen. Her life becomes a series of performances, for partners, for family, for society, even for herself. She spends so much energy trying to avoid abandonment that she ends up abandoning the only person who is with her for life, herself. Jung would say this is what happens when the shadow, all the parts of us we've pushed away, rejected, or buried, starts to run the show unconsciously. The fear of not being enough, the anger never expressed, the grief never honored, the needs never spoken loudly, they don't disappear. They simply find other ways to express themselves. In our relationships, our choices, our patterns of pain. Real confidence, in Jungian psychology, is not an attitude you copy from a motivational video. It is the result of individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated self. This journey always involves descending into your own darkness, the parts of you you'd rather not see, the jealousy you feel but deny, the rage you silence behind a smile, the envy you pretend you don't experience, the dependency you hide behind, "I'm fine," the terror of being alone that forces you to stay where your soul feels dead. Most of us are taught to chase light, to be positive, to vibe high, to smile through everything. But as the text beautifully says, real power is not in trying to look bright all the time. Real power is in being able to look into your own darkness without running away. It might look like sitting in your room after a breakup and finally admitting, "I was begging to be chosen. I betrayed myself in this relationship. I stayed where I felt small because I was afraid of being alone." Or looking at your career and realizing, "I chose what looked acceptable, not what felt alive." Or noticing, "I've been pretending I don't want deeper love, just so I don't have to face the fear that maybe it's possible and I'm scared to open." These realizations hurt. They crack the persona, but they also free the self. Because once you see your patterns, you're no longer fully controlled by them. Once you name your shadow, you can bring it home instead of letting it sabotage your life from the basement. But here's something crucial. Confidence is not built by thinking differently only. It is built by acting differently. You can read about self-worth, watch videos about self-love, and repeat affirmations every morning. But if your behavior continues to betray your inner truth, your nervous system will always believe what you do, not what you say. The text mentions 3 powerful pillars of building real internal confidence. First, keeping the promises you make to yourself, even the small ones. Second, listening to your intuition and reconnecting with your body. Third, setting boundaries that protect your emotional and spiritual safety. Let's go deeper into each one. First, keeping promises to yourself. Think of every promise you make to yourself as a brick. When you keep that promise, your inner foundation becomes more solid. When you break it over and over, the foundation cracks. These promises don't have to be dramatic. In fact, it's often better if they're not. Real transformation is not made of giant, unsustainable gestures. It's made of small, consistent steps that tell your system, day after day, "I am here for you." A promise could be as simple as, "I will drink a glass of water when I wake up. I will walk for 10 minutes after work. I will spend 5 minutes every evening checking in with how I truly feel. I will not text someone who repeatedly disrespected my boundaries. I will stop reading that conversation when my body feels tight and anxious." Every time you follow through, your subconscious mind takes note. When she says she will do something for herself, she does it. That's how the belief, "I can rely on me," is built, not from theories, but from evidence. On the other hand, when you constantly promise and don't act, "I'll start on Monday, I'll block him tomorrow, I'll stop saying yes to everything," and then nothing changes, your subconscious also records that her words mean nothing. She abandons herself. So if you want to build real confidence, start where it looks almost too small. Choose 1 or 2 promises that are so tiny you cannot justify breaking them. Not to impress anyone, not to get quick results, just to rebuild the broken trust between you and you. Second, listening to your intuition and your body. We live in a world that worships the mind. We analyze, overthink, plan, calculate. We ask friends for advice, follow trends, study red flags and green flags. But the deepest truth often doesn't come from analysis. It comes from sensation. Your body knows when something is wrong long before your mind writes a story about it. Maybe your chest tightens when you speak to someone. Maybe your stomach drops when you agree to something you don't want. Maybe your shoulders get heavy every time you step into a certain environment. Maybe your heart feels strangely peaceful around a person who doesn't fit your usual type. We dismiss these signals, especially as women, because we've been taught to be polite, agreeable, nice. We learn to override our bodies in order not to be too sensitive or too dramatic. We lean into logic or into what others think we should do and silence the quiet voice inside us that says, this isn't right or this is right, even if no one understands. Rebuilding real confidence means coming back to this inner compass. It might look like pausing before saying yes and taking a breath to see how your body responds. Ending a phone call earlier when your body feels drained. Admitting to yourself, I feel unsafe here, even if you can't logically explain it yet. Honoring the pull toward a project, a place, a hobby, or a person that lights you up inside, even if it doesn't look practical. When you listen to your body and follow your intuition, you send yourself a powerful message. Your feelings matter. Your signals are valid. I will not gaslight you. That's where calm confidence grows. Not in being right all the time, but in knowing that whatever happens, you will listen to yourself and adjust. Third, setting boundaries. Many women confuse boundaries with aggression, coldness, or conflict. They think, if I set a boundary, people will think I'm rude, difficult, or selfish. So they choose to swallow discomfort instead, hoping that by being endlessly understanding, they will be loved. But a life without boundaries is a life without self-protection. And without self-protection, there can be no real self-trust. A boundary is not a wall. It's a door with a lock. It says, I choose what comes in and what stays out. It's not about punishing others. It's about being loyal to your own soul. Sometimes a boundary sounds like, I can't talk right now. Let's continue this conversation later. I'm not comfortable with that tone. If it continues, I'll leave the room. I'm not available to meet today. I understand you're upset, but shouting at me is not okay. I love you, but I will not sacrifice my mental health to keep this relationship alive. Will everyone like your boundaries? No. Do they have to? Also no. The moment you start setting boundaries, some people will resist. Not because you're wrong, but because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. They were used to accessing your time, energy, body, or attention without limits. When a woman with wounded energy sets her first real boundaries, it can feel terrifying. The fear of being abandoned flares up. The old pattern whispers, if you say no, you'll lose them. But if you never say no, you will lose yourself. And once your boundaries collapse, your confidence collapses with them. Because your system learns, even when something hurts me, I stay. Even when something violates me, I allow it. How can you feel genuinely confident if you don't believe you will protect yourself? Healthy boundaries are an act of self-loyalty. They are how you demonstrate, not to the world, but to your own nervous system. You are not defenseless. I've got you. Now, what happens when a woman does this work? When she keeps her promises, listens to her intuition, and sets boundaries rooted in self-respect. When she walks the Jungian path of moving from persona to self, from performance to presence, something magical but very real occurs. Her energy changes. Jung compared human contact to a kind of chemical reaction. When someone is centered, grounded, and integrated, their presence affects the entire environment around them. A woman with real confidence doesn't need to preach. She doesn't need to post motivational quotes every day. She doesn't need to convince anyone of her worth. She simply is. In a family gathering, she doesn't get pulled into every drama. Her calm becomes a strange mirror. People notice how chaotic their own energy feels around her, and some adjust without even knowing why. At work, she might not be the loudest voice in a room, but when she speaks, people listen. not because she dominates, but because there is congruence between her words and her being. She's not talking to impress. She's speaking from clarity. In relationships, she no longer begs to be chosen. She doesn't chase someone who repeatedly shows inconsistency. She can feel the pain of letting go and still let go, because she knows losing someone else is painful. Losing myself is devastating. Around her, people feel something like safety. They might not understand it, but they sense, I can't easily manipulate this person. I can't guilt her into things. I can't play with her sense of worth. And whether they admit it or not, that earns deep respect. She becomes, without trying, a kind of quiet healer. Not because she fixes everyone, but because her own journey of healing radiates an unspoken permission. You're allowed to be yourself too. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to stop performing. She doesn't walk around saying, let me teach you confidence. She just lives it, and that is more powerful than any speech. So we return to our two women in the cafe. The second woman, the one living from wounded energy, could easily become the first. Not by buying new clothes, mastering new flirting tactics, or collecting more followers, but by beginning the inner work of coming back to herself. By noticing where she betrays her own truth. By feeling where her body is saying no while her mouth says yes. By making one small promise to herself and keeping it. By daring to say, this doesn't respect me, and walking away. Step by step, she would begin to move from wound to wholeness, from fear to trust, from persona to self. And as she does, something subtle would happen. The desperate need to be seen would soften. The obsession with being chosen would fade. The craving for constant validation would quiet down. Not because she stopped wanting love or connection, but because she finally found a source inside that the world cannot take away. This is the secret of the magnetic woman. Her power is not in her volume, her outfit, or her social status. Her power is in one simple, profound fact. She does not betray herself. She has met her own darkness and did not abandon it. She has looked at her own shadow and chose to integrate it, not hide it. She has walked through fear, shame, and heartbreak, and on the other side, found something solid, an unshakable bond with herself. You feel that bond when she walks into a room. You see it in her eyes, in the way she stands, in the way she says no without apologizing for existing. The text you shared ends with a powerful truth. Real magnetic power does not come from noise, appearance, or show. It comes from a soul that refuses to betray itself. So if you're watching this, listening to these words, and part of you is thinking, that's not me, at least not yet, let this be your reminder. You don't have to become someone else to be powerful. You don't have to erase your sensitivity, your softness, your vulnerability. You don't have to scream to be heard. Your journey is not about learning a role. It's about removing the roles that no longer fit. It's about coming home to the woman you were before the world told you who you should be. Start with one promise you will keep, one feeling you will honor, one boundary you will protect. From there, watch how your inner chemistry begins to change, and how, slowly but surely, the world around you starts to respond to a woman who is no longer asking, am I enough? But quietly declaring with every breath, I'm on my own side, and that is my greatest power.